The journey toward our higher selves continues with conversations in the Indigo Tent. Join us on the adventure.
Go. Okay.
Welcome to the tent, Wendy.
Hey, Zella. Welcome to you too. So good to see you here.
Definitely. How is your world?
My world is quite the world. I acquired a new little family member, a four-legged version, and it was quite insightful in that the little puppy requires lots of training and attention and consistency, which is delightfully, surprisingly related to my New Year's theme of thinking about and thinking about priorities in the sense of being consistent and how and all of that. And so, yeah, I'm I'm learning also to prioritize consistency for the darling little puppy.
And what type of dog is he?
He is a Shiba Inu, which is essentially a smaller version of an Akita, which we used to have.
And it was an Akita originally came about to be a guard dog at temples and palaces in Japan.
Yeah, a guard dog, and I'm told that they're a companion dog that they'll watch over the baby in the
Yeah,
household.
I like that.
And the Shibas, on the other hand, I've the reading I've been doing is they look very similar to the Akita, but they're much smaller. So they're about 20 pounds max. But then they were more like bird hunters or hunting dogs.
Oh, okay.
So I guess that means they need a little more exercise, which we're working on trying to help him appreciate the harness
Uh-huh.
because leash laws and all,
Yeah.
and he's not quite there yet.
No. And what is his name?
Decided to call him, well, okay, so there's a little story behind naming. My sons both are Avatar, the Last Airbender fans,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you know anything about the show, it's, they're fictitious four nations that have certain skills for working with the elements, not unlike Chinese medicine. But there's airbenders, waterbenders, firebenders, and earthbenders. Anyway, they love the show, and so and since we're getting a Japanese dog, they wanted to have an avatar name, and they were thinking Appa first, which was the flying bison that the avatar would ride. I was like, well, anyway, long story short, one of the other words or terms from within the show and others is sensei, which means teacher or mentor. And I thought, well, yes, in its own way, this little dog has a lot to teach me.
There
So
you go. And back to the consistency.
about myself and itself. Yeah.
I love it.
So there we are.
There we are. Well, I have, you mentioned one of your New Year's themes. So one of my New Year's themes is to truly embrace the Yoga Sutras that were written by Patanjali thousands and thousands of years ago, a wise sage who lived in India. And within the Yoga Sutras, there's the yamas and the niyamas, which is equivalent to the Ten Commandments in the Judaic law and the Old Testament. And so
A reoccurring theme.
It
Hmm,
is. And don't most religions have some type of code of conduct?
absolutely. That is the whole basis of culture, is that there's an agreed upon of sorts system of behavior
Right.
for living together as a community.
Ah, very, that's interesting because I was reading about the community this morning. But today, listeners, we're going to take one of the yamas, which is satya, which means truth.
Mm.
And in the book, The Secret Power of Yoga, written by Neshla Joy Devi,
Shh. It's a secret.
secret. What I really like about her book, it's a commentary on the Yoga Sutras. Back
Mhm.
in the 1800s, when India was colonized by, and we could say conquered, excuse me, by the get that frog out of my throat.
Bless you.
Yeah, when they were conquered by the British, they English men decided to study everything they could Indian. And of course, some of those things would be the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, and then, of course, the Yoga Sutras. And the Yoga Sutras are 200 short, very concise little nuggets of how to live, how to have that fitness for your soul, how to connect with your higher self, or how to be in union with God.
Mm. Not
And
to be confused with the other kind of sutras.
right, not those sutras, people. Uh,
Those
and
are those are other activities.
which are fine in and of themselves. So anyway, in the yamas, we have right living, code of conduct. And so anyway, so these men did these, I'm sorry, I got distracted for a second. So going back, so men have interpreted for years and years and years, or for thousands and thousands of years, right? Have interpreted our sacred text in any religion from any culture. And Neshala decided to put a woman's spin on the Yoga Sutras and to give her commentary. And what I
Mm.
find fascinating is, for instance, ahimsa, the first of the yamas, means nonviolence. Well, she's taken a different spin. Instead of always telling us what we shouldn't do and the negative, perspective, she has changed it to, instead of nonviolence, she has changed it to embracing reverence and love for all.
Mm. Yeah, and oh, there's all sorts of brain stuff we can throw on that too. Of the brain only focuses on the word, not the do not part.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And she's referenced that in several of her lectures that I've heard on YouTube. So the second yama, which we're gonna dive into today, and I'm so excited because we get Wendy's perspective as an anthropologist. Um, the second one again is satya, and that we should be truthful.
Mm.
And Neshala takes it a step further and says we should be dedicated to truth and integrity. Okay, and now I'm going to read a little excerpt from her book, and then we're going to get into this word. So the word is gossip.
Ooh, juiciness.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
All right.
doesn't that word have a lot of baggage?
Doesn't it? Oh, so
Mm.
charged. Okay, gossiping diffuses our nervous systems. The so called fight or flight syndrome is considered a normal male response to a sympathetic nervous system reaction. The response is different when the same feelings are elicited in a woman's nervous system. As women, we process our stress differently from men. If there is great danger, a man goes into fight or flight. Being maternal by nature, and this is making huge blanket statements, people, and we realize
Of
that.
course.
Just take it, okay, for right
It's
now.
it's it's one person's interpretation.
Exactly. Being maternal by nature, women are engineered to protect. When danger approaches, we become quiet and still and ask our children to respond in the same way. Now, here's what she's getting at. What then happens when the danger passes? We can go to the gym and we can dissipate all of that hormone dump, that cortisol dump, right? We can take care of it that way, and we should. That is an effective way.
Mm-hmm.
Here is Neshula's premise, which this is the juicy part that we're going to discuss. Women tend to find comfort in sharing and expressing feelings with others. If this is not done, our feelings burrow deep within. Sadly, this normal instinct to freeze and withdraw often leads us to depression. A woman's more verbal response to emotionally charged events has been misunderstood and criticized for ages. The now derogatory term gossip originally meant to see God or God parent. Gossiping actually started as an alarm system. Women hanging clothes to dry would pass on news of the town, warnings, or any unpleasant experiences, especially with abusive men.
Mm.
They would whisper these messages, hoping to avail others to peril. When the men found out their names were being dragged through the mud, or in this case, the clean sheets, they decreed, they
Talk of,
decreed, what?
I was going to say, talk about airing out your dirty laundry.
Yeah. So these men decreed a severe punishment for anyone gossiping.
Hmm.
Okay, so much to unpack.
Wow, wow, wow. Yeah. And so, while we were talking about this, of course, I love learning about words and how they came to be what they are. And so I looked up the etymology of the word gossip. Would you like to hear it?
Oh, do tell.
Oh, please. Okay.
Gossip with me.
Okay. So it says it's from Old English, and the origin was God sib. So I'm thinking like sibling. It was connected to godfather, godmother, baptismal sponsor, which in that time was that person that was there to help you on your way and after you were baptized, to help you on the path toward God.
And what time frame are we talking about?
Well, it says Old English,
Okay, so
17th earlier, I, I would imagine as the different religions have progressed, that there's always been something like that because of the mortality rate
mhm,
of life at that point, right?
mhm.
Because
So
a
we're
lot
talking
of,
Dark Ages, Middle
yeah,
Ages.
yes, 15th, 16th, 17th century,
Okay, maybe even sooner though. I mean, think
and
about
and
it.
could be earlier,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Right. So
a lot of
then,
because people were so afraid of dying because it happened all the time. It's not that they were afraid of dying; they were afraid of damnation and hell, and so they wanted all the help they could get. Right?
that, and then you also wanted to make sure you had someone designated to help raise your family if
Oh,
you were,
gone.
you didn't make it,
Yeah.
which happened a lot.
Okay, got it.
And so the whole idea of godfather and godmother were those people that basically agreed to take care of your child if you the parent died.
Got it.
And then we have all those fairy tales about the evil stepmother. Hmm. Oh, that's a
Right.
whole nother discussion, but
Yeah.
so, and as the etymology goes on, it's literally a person related to one in God or from
Mm.
God.
Mhm.
A God sib, a relative, right?
And
So
then and
it
then
could be
taking
mhm,
what Neshula said, to see God. Gossip
yeah,
originally, the root of it, Latin, was to see God, right?
Right, because it's you're seeing and you're relating each other within the sense of being a godlike person or trying to achieve um, your best highest self, right?
Mhm.
So then from Middle English, I guess moving on from Old English, the sense was that this is a close friend with one with whom one gossips, hence a person who gossips. And interestingly, there it was like, was this friend and your conversations helping you on your path? So then now I'm really curious, how in the world did it get so flipped?
Mhm. Right. So let's talk
And
about the roles of men and women.
yeah, and so well, but I think and before we jump into that one, I was thinking of how you and I uh, work through like life
Mhm.
with each other, right? Where it's things that just happen, and on one level it may sound, oh yeah, we're just gossiping or we're venting, but I'd like to think that the way that we are talking is we're verbalizing, hence that female venting, we're verbalizing those feelings so that we can understand them from a little bit of a emotional distance, so that we can then help each other gain a higher perspective about those feelings and
Mhm.
about all these emotions that keep attacking us.
Right. And so that they don't burrow deep, lay dormant, and become a seed for depression or anxiety.
Or many, essentially all the different diseases or conditions, they get trapped in our body and then they become a physical entity or a
Mhm.
physical disease.
Mhm. A physical manifestation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's, thinking about it from that perspective, now we can jump into the men and women thing. But as we women who want to support each other in developing our higher selves to becoming the best that we can be, then it is an incredible process, and it's not for the faint of heart either, hence the whole fitness for your soul.
Mhm.
It takes a lot of courage to be able to allow yourself to feel sort of inhuman or subpar so that you can get to that next place up.
Right. To
Now,
examine where you have an area that needs work, that needs help, that needs fine tuning.
mhm, yeah, it's a funny juxtaposition, right? We're here on earth to become better people, but yet we scold ourselves for not being already perfect.
Mhm.
Hmm.
We do. We do. And we
And
address that in the course that we're currently finishing up, editing, getting ready to
mm,
publishing. We talk a great deal about that, that we're so hard on ourselves. And how does that inhibit our growth? Right.
yeah, certainly
And then
does.
if you see yourself as a gossip, maybe take a step back. Are you speaking about other people maliciously? Or are you truly trying to work out something? Because when the word changed, and now it has such a different connotation. Um, so let's talk about men and women's roles, and then we can talk about our current view of the word gossip.
Hmm. Yeah. So if you look back, uh, in various cultures, there have been lots of ways that we divide up the roles or the functions of each gender in society. There's, just think about it, for efficiency's sake, it made more sense to have a division of labor, because then you knew what you were supposed to be doing, right? It was nothing, it was more at that point about survival,
Right.
and it wasn't about, this or that. I think as we got away, right? Okay, so here's this juxtaposition again. We have to be willing to see ourselves as a work in progress, but yet we expect ourselves to be already perfect.
Mhm.
And so you could imagine how that would lead to, well, everybody else is imperfect but me, because I'm supposed to be perfect, right?
Mhm.
Um, and now I'm thinking, well, if maybe that's how it started getting turned around, this word gossip, was if we were talking, if we were just sharing our struggles, but then it became this way of so putting yourself higher up than another person.
Mhm. So go
Now
back.
we're only going to share the negative struggles of everyone else and not ourselves.
Right. So go back and talk about men men versus women, men having um insecurities about the fact that women can give birth.
Mm. Yeah, that's another really intriguing area. When we think about this division of roles, right? Women have the ability to give birth. And in many ways, that ability is seen as this little baby, this child, this soul is coming directly from God. Wow, what an amazing ability to bless you. Oh,
Thank
I see some silent sneezes. But how incredible it is to have this ability to bring a soul straight from God into the world.
Mhm.
And I can imagine that over over time in various cultures, that men found that a bit something to envy in a sense,
And to be intimidated by.
and to be intimidated by. Yes, it's like, how is it these women can have this direct connection to God in that sense, bringing a soul into life, and that would be, yeah, that would be like a really intimidating factor. And so instead of recognizing their own role in life and their own ability to create a connection with God, they said, well, let's put ourselves up by putting the other down.
Mhm.
And so I could see a natural progression of, well, if men are busy putting themselves into a sense of power and squashing the power that's innately divinely within women, then yeah, of course we're going to like everything they do must be bad because
Right.
and and then you have that interpretation. Ooh, it just occurred to me, another point to the men was that this interpretation, well, who was the one in the Garden of Eden that took that bite?
Yes.
Oh, it's all Eve's fault. Well, let's she just, the first sinner, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, what about this perspective? I look at it now. Of course, this is Wendy's thoughts, not any scripture, but what if for us to actually progress here on earth and to be able to expand our families and that whole, what if we had to take that bite of the apple to be able to get to the next step?
Mm.
in our eternal progression,
In our evolution.
in our evolution. So then who was willing to do that first? Who could see the bigger picture?
Women.
Right. So again, it's about perspective. Now, I'm sure all those answers we'll find out once we get
To the
back
other side.
to the other side. Yes.
I
And
love it.
yeah, but it's, it's like, again, it's about how do we spin the story?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going back to the gossiping. How are we spinning the story? Are we spinning the story to boost ourselves up and the other people down? Or are we spinning our stories to build all of us up?
Uh, and then that goes to the oh, that makes me think of the next yama, which is basically like in the Ten Commandments, don't covet, right? So if we covet what other people have, aren't we really saying, no, we're not sure that God is so generous that there's abundance for all? There's an equal playing field. The spiritual path to God is good for not only men and women, black or white, rich or poor, spiritual being, spiritually aware type of person, spiritually unaware type of person. We are all on some path to our higher self. But
Yes.
then you have all these divisions like, oh well, your denomination, I've literally been told, well, you can't really be a Christian because you're a Catholic. Like, well, wait a minute. What?
Yes. Yeah.
So
And I've been told my God's some different God than their God. I'm like, wait, what?
so then that brings a whole new perspective to this idea of gossip being a God seer, and that we're all in community together as fellow human beings here on this planet to promote, encourage, and love one another as we progress to our higher self. And if I put you in a box, or I put you in play, and oh, I'm going to put him in his place, or her in her place by calling her a gossip, and then I'm saying, nope, you're not worthy of this spiritual path that I'm on. I'm over here, you're down here because you're a gossip, and I'm not a gossip, so I'm higher elevated than you. Wow.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And going back to the author's description of this whole piece was that men and women, yeah, we process our stress differently.
Right.
Men are by nature, they're wired to be hunters and singularly focused because that was necessary for survival.
Right.
Right. And so it makes sense that they need to be more physical and channel that energy. Now, we're physical too as females. But when we get, all the thoughts in our heads about protectiveness for our families and children and loyalty and maternalness and and coping and we just have probably 1,000 emotions going on all at once. And so, and I saw this actually played out in my parents' relationships
Uh,
in a different way. Um, Kind of reversed roles. My dad was more of a thinker and a talker. He liked to have intellectual conversations. My mom was just, I got to do stuff.
right.
And so they never quite connected because they were each approaching life differently. Not that one was better or worse,
Mm-hmm.
but for men who are typically, much more active stress um, responders.
And we say the word typically because we realize there's all different personalities within the roles of, within genders. So,
Sure. It's just, yes, we're doing the cultural stereotype.
right.
Um, Women tend to be more communicative because we need to think and analyze or just, we just process emotions verbally.
Mhm.
I guess, more so. And so, yeah, I would see it totally makes sense. Like we're not even communicating in the same language. So of course men are like, what in the world are they over here doing? You know, they could just resolve this by doing that. But we're like, no, we've got to, find our meandering pathway to get to an answer. And
Mhm.
that just took too long.
Yes.
And so it's like, of course, when you don't understand something, okay, here's a good one. When you don't understand, you reject.
Absolutely. I see it all the time. We all see it, especially in our current political climate with
Yes,
what our nation is going through with the recent election. If we don't understand it, we just reject it.
it must be bad if it's not our idea.
Right.
And you could see, you can just look at history and see the evolution of how gossiping went from an uplifting, theoretically, activity to
Virtue
something that is considered unholy or improper or negative,
or
all
malicious.
of that, right?
And then think about
Malicious.
the context now. Gossip Girls. What are some other shows? Pretty Little
What a
Lies
show.
or Big Little Lies.
Yeah, one of those liar shows. Pretty liar shows. Yes. And it's like, what is it? It's like the young adult or high school soap opera type shows
Yeah.
where all you see are the maliciousness. Oh, Mean Girls and all that whole scene. And think about it. Why would you be mean to another person unless you
Don't
are trying
understand
to
it, and you're
cover up
rejecting them.
something in yourself?
Oh, say that again. Say that again.
Why would you be mean to others unless you're trying to cover up something in yourself?
Hmm. And then what we said earlier, if you don't understand it, you just reject it.
Yeah.
Lots of different ways of why we end up being mean to one another.
Yeah. It is just so intriguing how we took gossip as something that meant a person related to another in God,
Hmm.
a
To see God,
godlike relationship,
right? To see God. And I found
and
it.
then turned it into just the one, this one part of it, which is the sharing, the exchange of information that now tends to have just simply a malicious intent.
Hmm. And then let's go back. Let's go back. Several hundred years, and let's pretend that you and I are hanging out close. And where do you want to be? Italy or Germany?
We're airing our own dirty laundry.
So I would pick Italy. What country would you pick?
Yeah, I'm thinking the Tuscan area sounds pretty good.
Okay, so we're hanging out the sheets, and we you're telling me how your husband's abusive, and we're trying to come up with a plan, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to protect you and your kids. And your husband hears his name, and instead of, this is all hypothetical, by the way, people, because Wendy's not married. That's why I chose you.
Nor do I live in Tuscany.
All right. So your fictitious husband, instead of thinking, wow, my actions are troubling my wife, I need to respond and evolve and figure this out, and I need to change. No, he gets offended because he doesn't understand, and so he rejects what he hears and chooses to continue in his ways. And then that brings in the whole idea of the ego. Are we
Oh,
going are we going to submit to our higher selves, to a higher being, to a better way of living? Or are we going to be stuck in that I'm right, you're wrong mentality?
hmm, I love the idea. One of my mentors uses, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy?
That's good. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, no, there was a time when I needed to be right
Mm-hmm.
because I felt so unright in so many other aspects of life.
Lacking power.
Mhm. And then there's a wisdom, if you will, of hearing past the words that people are saying.
Ah, say that again.
There's a wisdom to hearing beyond the words that people are saying.
Yeah, that's good. And that's what that fictitious husband should have done. He should have
Mhm.
heard beyond the words and wrapped his wife up in his arms and made a commitment to her to change.
Yeah. And then also to acknowledge, I mean, why do people abuse other people? Because they've been in some way abused
Mm-hmm.
and they're simply passing on the pain that they don't know how to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
so
then,
if we could just simply seek to understand where the pain, and then we don't have to pass it on.
right. And then going back to what you said, seeing past the words of what somebody's saying. And then that brings us right back to the second yama, which is satya, truthfulness, and that we need to be in a state of mind where we are dedicated to truth and integrity, choosing our words carefully. Our words have a lot of power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are some schools of thought, or some individuals are like, oh, words have no meanings, blah blah blah. It's only the meanings we associate with them. Well, yes, we did associate a meaning with those words, so they do have power.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, until we are above all of that, beyond this earth, then yes, words still do have power.
Mm-hmm. And we need to be dedicated to speaking truth, speaking it honestly and with integrity in
Yes.
order to connect with our higher self.
Yeah. And that reminds me of some people I've known over the years who felt like they had to say, oh, well, I'm just brutally honest.
Yes,
And I'm like, but wait a minute, why should honesty be brutal? Because
exactly.
what, are you saying this because it's your opinion about something that I should be doing? Or are you saying something in with the integrity of helping me be my highest, my best self? And if that's the case, then, well, yes, it may be painful to hear or challenging to hear, but it doesn't have to be delivered in a brutal manner.
Exactly. And then timing is everything. And Neshula talks about this. It's interesting that you use that as an example because, well, her story is if your friend comes out in this new dress they've just purchased and it's about 5 minutes before a big event, and that dress is not a good choice in your opinion. But are you going to tell them that right then and undermine them, pull the rug out from under them when they're about to go out and speak to 500 people? No, choose your timing, right? Maybe the next day, if it comes up in a gentle way, say, you know, maybe that's not the right dress for you after all, but not right then. So I think instead of being brutally honest, it isn't just about how you say it, but it's also when you say it, interpreting
And
the
yeah,
time and the space and what that person's about to experience is what I'm getting at. um
yeah. And why you're
and why.
saying it.
Yeah,
What
why.
compels you? Is that your job? Is that your role?
Hmm.
Did your friend ask you about that dress?
Hmm. Right. Maybe, yeah, play the
I,
play the scenario a different way.
right. Did she want that feedback?
Hmm. I've learned that from my own mother, because my mother is very critical of my parents almost every day of my life. She'll tell me what outfit looks good and what outfit doesn't, and tell me about my body shape. And it used to pull the rug out from under me, and that's exactly what she intended it for to do. But as I'm learning to deal with my mother as her caretaker, um, I choose to tell her every time I see her how lovely she looks in every outfit. I'm choosing to make my words a reflection of what I wish she would say to me. I wish she would see me instead of picking apart the clothes I'm wearing or the 5 pounds I've gained.
Thanks,
And so,
COVID.
yeah. So I'm just applying her my words as what I wish would happen. I'm speaking them in honesty and in love.
Yes.
And that I can tell you, listeners, has helped my relationship with my mother in the past few years. Single-handedly, the most important effective thing that I've done is just choosing my words back to her, seeing beyond when she says something unkind. I'm seeing past her words. I'm seeing the circumstance. She's just an unhappy woman, and I can't change that, but I can change how I see and speak and think about her.
Yes, that's her pattern of behavior and coping.
Hmm.
It does not have to become our own.
Right. Well, with that, I
Wow.
think,
So a moment with your higher self. Yes.
yeah, we have some things that we will put in the show notes to definitely steer you towards looking at words that you speak in your own life.
Yeah. And in a nutshell, I let's challenge you listeners and ourselves every time, or think about this, when we have a conversation with someone, are we having a God sib conversation or are we having a gossip conversation?
Love it. That's perfect.
And
That
we'd
is
love to hear your comments.
that was really, really good, Wendy. I enjoyed that. Are you having a God sib moment or a conversation or a gossip conversation? I just wanted to say that again because that is what we're trying to convey in this podcast.
Yeah.
Use your words, think about them, speak your truth with integrity and honesty.
And support all of us in the journey to our higher self.
Yeah. All right. See y'all next time in the tent.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye bye. Y'all come back now. We hope you've been uplifted by this episode. Please help us uplift others by sharing, subscribing, and reviewing our show. Join in on the conversation by adding your insights and transformations in the comments section. See you next time.